So I guess without further ado, I'll hand over to Matthew and Callum. I think Peter's just joining us. I'll admit people as you fire away, guys.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Scott. So hi, to those of you that are here, welcome to this workshop titled Cybersecurity Essentials for Digital Businesses. And thanks to the Digital City team for having us today. And I'm with my business partner, Callum, and we'll be hosting this session for you. It's a real pleasure to be here to share with you our knowledge and to give you our top tips for securing your digital businesses without breaking the bank. And as I'm sure you'll all agree, as business leaders, we really have to wear numerous different hats. So whether that be accounting or it could be accounting or, any of the hats that you need as a business leader. One of the hats that's becoming increasingly important is your cybersecurity hat. So in this workshop, we're going to take you through what we believe to be the most important and easily actionable security best practices so that, you can really secure your business as much as possible on a small budget. First then, just to introduce ourselves and give you a bit more background about us. So my name is Matthew Prothero-Hill. I'm co-founder with Callum, who's with us, of Cencode Cybersecurity. And as Scott mentioned, I predominantly deal with the e-learning side of things and cyber awareness training like this. And a couple of hobbies, I'll say one hobby is aerial photography. I've got a drone there as well. It actually comes in quite handy for external penetration tests when we need to assess the vulnerabilities of a building or a piece of land. And you can see there on the right hand side, that's my feline overlord Scatty. So he keeps me busy opening and closing doors on a regular basis. Contact details there, you can get me on LinkedIn, and there's my email address there as well. And we'd encourage you to have a look at our website, which we've recently just relaunched. And there's loads of information on there as well. Also, have a look at breaches.cencode.co.uk. That's a free service that we offer where you can pop in your email address. And it's very similar to haveibeenpwned.com, if you've heard of that, where you put in your email address or a phone number and it will tell you whether or not it's been involved in a data breach. It's completely free and we don't collect any of the information that you put in there. But if you do find that you've been in a data breach or your email's been compromised, then it's time at the very least to change your password, if not your email address altogether. And my mission at Cencode is to eliminate cyber risk by improving cyber awareness and promoting a culture of security beyond compliance. What do we mean by that? Well, in our experience, what we've found is that a lot of companies will realize that they do need to get their security tested, and then they will get a report, and then the test will go back 6 to 12 months down the line and nothing's been done about it at all. So in actual fact, although they've ticked the compliance box, the security is actually getting worse because they're not doing anything to remediate the problems that are found. So we really try to go that extra mile to make sure that security is actually improving for our clients. Okay, I'll just hand you over to Callum.
Hi guys, yeah, I'm Callum, one of the co-founders of Cencode, and I generally tend to do quite a lot of things like Matt said. When you're an entrepreneur or a co-founder of a business, you have to basically do everything. But I have experience, being a cyber awareness instructor like Matthew, full stack web developer. So I used to develop websites as well as I'm the guy that Matthew sends in to test and security test any infrastructure. And I'm also a huge nerd. So if you're interested in rock climbing or Dungeons and Dragons, let me know. I've got my LinkedIn, email, website there. And my mission statement a lot of the time is when I get sent in, it's to find problems with your infrastructure and hopefully roll a natural 20 on your network and see if we can't break some stuff so that we can fix it. I'll pass you on to Matthew just to go over some introductions and
Cheers,
get a
Callum.
bit,
So
hear a bit
this
from you guys. Sorry.
this will probably be a short section, but if you guys just want to introduce yourself, and we've got I've seen Pete's arrived, and we've got Mike. Just really, is there any particular reason that you've joined this workshop? Do you have any particular concerns about your business? And we'll see if we can answer any questions there for you.
If you want me to start then. One thing, being in the security industry, they're in the police and other emergency services are in the process of rolling out a new system. And for us to be enrolled in that system, we've got to go down the cybersecurity essentials route. So it's just to get a bit more information to see what was about. There are some providers that they're trying to push, but if we can keep it local and we can get some advice locally, then it's going to be worthwhile. And just trying to identify what we actually need to do to be able to comply with everything.
Yeah, brilliant. Pete?
Yeah, so for me, obviously you guys know I'm from the social media platform, and it's to understand what security options are available to test on a regular basis, because obviously it's incredibly important for us that we have no breaches whatsoever. Really.
Peter, your signal's pretty poor. Would you mind just bring that mic a bit more over your mouth?
Is that better?
That's better.
Loads
Yeah.
better.
Right,
If you can start that again, please.
So
Thanks.
apologies, yeah. So for me, developing a social media platform, we need to better understand the security risks, and we need to be on top of that regularly, because for the nature of the information that we will be storing, it would be a catastrophe to us if we were to have a breach and data to be stolen. So it's for us to better understand what options are available to us.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Well, hopefully today the stuff that we're going through, a lot of this content has been drawn from our core training modules, which you can see here. And you know, if at any point you want to know more about any of these particular subjects or any other subjects, just head over to our website. You can see what we've got on there. But today we've really tried to draw on what we think is probably, you know, going to be most helpful for you guys as startups, and you know, really give you the information that you can actually put into practice, that it's not going to cost you anything, and you've got some resources there that you can draw on. Another thing just to bear in mind is we also understand that every business is different and faces different challenges when it comes to cybercrime. So we really try to put cybercrime into context by covering case studies that are relevant to your particular business, and by understanding other businesses and how they've fallen victim to criminal hackers. It should really help you to avoid the same pitfalls. And I'd say if we make good progress, there's a good chance we'll go through a couple of these for you at the end. Okie dokie. So I think we've covered this one really. It was just to see if there's any burning questions you have about cybersecurity.
Yeah.
But if you're happy with that, we'll just dive in.
Just as a bit of a response to Mike going over cyber essentials and that kind of thing, that is something, you know, the content from a lot of this is taken directly from cyber essentials, or is directly applicable to some of the cyber essentials stuff that you will have to do for that. So hopefully it'll put you on a better footing for that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okie dokie, so let's just run through what we're going to be covering in this workshop. So we really want to drive home how important cyber awareness is. Of course, you're aware of that. We'll touch on understanding phishing. We'll look at password security and two-factor authentication, which really go hand in hand. Then Callum will talk about antivirus software and wireless networks. And then we've got some tips for remote workers, as we've all had to get used to working remotely, or not necessarily in the office, particularly over the pandemic. And then we'll look at website security. So if you've got a website, there'll be some tips and hints on how to make sure that's secure. And then we'll look at data protection and GDPR. And yeah, as Callum said, a lot of these subjects are you know, they are included in Cyber Essentials, so it should give you some good background. Towards the end, we'll look at some free cybersecurity resources that we can point in the direction of, and then we'll do a couple of case studies at the end. Okay. So we'll start with a quick question, just for a bit of fun, get the cogs moving. How much money do you think cybercrime currently costs businesses globally each year? So if you just want to have a wild guess, we'll start with you, Peter. It's not a test, don't worry.
But you will be marked. You're muted.
Yeah, billions. Billions.
Brilliant. Billions.
Billions. Yeah.
Billions.
Billions. Close.
Okay, good guess. Nice big number.
Yeah.
Mike, what do you think?
Like,
To be fair, that would have been my answer as well.
Billions. Okay.
well,
Yeah, good.
Close.
More than I've got in the bank.
Yeah, in actual fact, cybercrime doubled to an annual global cost of 4.6 trillion by the start of this year, and it's set to just continue. So we're looking
Well,
at
that's some number, that isn't it?
isn't it just?
Yeah, I mean, even a wild guess is an order of magnitude off, right? You think you'd say billions, and it's a million times more a billion.
Yeah, and it's set to rise 2025. We're looking at 7.7 trillion. So it's a huge problem, and it's continuously growing. Particularly as we're getting more and more dependent on our digital aids, our digital infrastructure. We've got the explosion of IoT, or Internet of Things, so all your smart devices that you're starting to see come through now. And the majority of these are not made with any security in mind at all. So if you think about it, if you're surrounding yourselves with all these devices that are connected to the internet, like, you know, your fridge that can order your shopping for you when it's running low, or, you know, you can turn your kettle on from the car as you come in home. All of these internet connected devices are another attack vector that you have around you. And it's really important that we remember that. So again, we've got another reason why it's so important. Robert Mueller here, he was the director of the FBI, summed it up quite well when he said there's only two types of companies: those that have been hacked and those that are going to be. Okay, and it's quite true. So who's doing the attacking then? Who do we need to be aware of? And threat actors is a term that we use to describe hackers who really threaten the assets of an organization. They usually vary in skill set and motivation, and they fall into these categories that you can see here. Firstly, we've got script kiddies. And although it sounds like slang, it's actually the genuine designation given to hackers who are just starting out. And they're usually younger, tend to be unskilled, and also like to favor using other people's code and hard work, really just to make things happen for themselves. And they do that without really understanding what they're doing or the consequences of doing it. Next, we've got criminals. It's a term that we should all be familiar with, and in the context of cyber, it usually refers to black hats. Have you guys heard of black hats and white hats in terms of hackers? Yeah. So those are the black hats, and they're usually trying to make ill-gotten gains from exploiting vulnerable systems any way that they can. Competitors, this more refers to sort of corporate espionage, if you like, and it's where hackers have been drafted for the purpose of finding out, you know, what competing businesses are doing to get an advantage. State-sponsored or advanced persistent threats, or APT as are now known. These are usually state-sponsored attacks from, you know, countries that are trying to interrupt a rival state. So it's where a government mobilizes a hacking task force to disrupt the operation of the state that they're targeting. Of course, if you see the news at all, you've probably heard a lot about Russia and China, as they're particularly well known for this sort of socioeconomic behavior. Hacktivists next, probably best known Anonymous. You see the guy there with the Guy Fawkes mask on. We've seen these guys an awful lot, and they usually have a political agenda and use their skills to carry out their activism. Then we've got terrorists. Again, they might have a political agenda, but they tend to use their skills to create fear, actually cause deaths and force their targets to act. And insider is a growing threat, particularly since the pandemic, as workforces have become decentralized. And because we've all been working remotely, we've seen a lot of disgruntled members of staff who've been known to take illegal action against their employers by hacking and gaining unauthorized access. And the term insider can actually refer to any of the threat actors in this list. And it's a real concern because it's quite insidious and they're very difficult to identify. So why could you be a target? Why do you need to care about cybersecurity? Well, a popular misconception for business owners is that we commonly see and hear about data breaches and cybercrime only happening to larger companies out there. So your Facebooks, your Google, or Equifax, for example. But the chances are that when you're setting up your business, there'll be components of it that are reliant on these bigger third parties. And it's really important that you're aware of these connections and the implications that that might have and the impact it might have on your business. Okie dokie, I will hand you over to Callum, who's going to run you through some phishing.
Wicked. So there's a specific reason for starting with phishing, and this is probably because it's the most common attack you'll see, right? And it is a cyber attack. It's not just something that's thrown out there to get a bit of money or whatever. It's a targeted attack against a company or an individual or you know, hundreds of thousands of people. It's really easy to send out these kinds of attacks, and they send them out and they try and catch people out simply because it works, right? These kinds of attacks are responsible for something like 22% of the breaches that have gone on. So when you are thinking of phishing, although you might spot a phishing email that's really easy to spot and really easy to sort of dismiss quite easily, right? Everyone knows that they've had some Nigerian prince reach out to them and say that they've owned, you know, they're owed a lot of money, but sometimes they're not as easy to spot, and that's where companies start getting caught out. Maybe they're sending an invoice that looks like it's for a company, and you pay that invoice, and it turns out, oh, it's a completely new person, and you know, turns out that they just faked an email that said was sending an invoice. Or something like 81% of businesses have struggled with this or have at least been targeted by a phishing attack, and 22% of breaches are actually successful, right? Successful phishing attacks that worked. So moving on to sort of the types of phishing attacks that you're going to see. You've got spear phishing and you've got whale phishing. Spear phishing is usually targeting a specific individual or a specific business, and maybe you have a bit of information about a business or an individual that you can throw into the email, right? Maybe if you're targeting a specific company, you can go on LinkedIn and look at, oh, who runs this company? What's the names? What can I include in my email to look more reasonable or look better? You know, and make them more likely to click it. And then you have whale phishing, which is a similar type of thing, but it's aimed at high profile individuals. So high profile individuals, usually, you know, with wealth, money, and anyone that, you know, maybe you'll get 1 in a billion, right? Or 1 in a million people clicking on these emails. And just that one will make you a lot of money. Whereas sending them out to loads of people and hoping that 1% of them click them can make you little bits of money. So we're moving on to like the attack vectors. So obviously everyone knows about email, right? Everyone knows that you're going to get phishing emails, or if you put out your email publicly, that is a risk. One of the ways to stop getting them is to not have your emails public or have specific emails public that you know you have to be wary of. But there's also other ways. So you've got SMS and smishing. I always hate saying that, smishing. And that's usually, I'm sure everyone's in the pandemic has lived through some of this, right? I would imagine everyone has an example of a phishing attack or a smishing attack where you've been sent a text that says it's from the government, or you've been sent a text that says, oh, come and claim X from, here's your COVID vaccination text or something like that. And they're trying to make you click a link and go to that site or mess around with whatever's there. And then there's also phishing, which is usually like voice phishing. You're making a phone call, they're pretending to be someone else. So say you get a phone call from Carphone Warehouse and they're pretending to be Carphone Warehouse and to get that information from you, or to get you to give up more information than what you would have if you just got a text or got an email. Both of these are a little harder to do than email, but generally they're a little less prominent as well, which is why it's important to know how to spot a phishing email. So looking at this email in front of you,
Callum, just a quick question from me. How? Sorry to interject.
Yeah, no problem.
How are these hackers getting the initial information? Are they sourcing it from your mobile phone provider, or how does it happen?
It's a very lucrative industry to sell this kind of information on, right? So you think of Google or Facebook or whomever, they have a number of partners who they pass information to, and those partners have people that they pass information to, and they're generally relatively secure, right? But then you have people that want to make a little bit more money, and they pass it to a partner who gives them a higher rate, and that information just gets passed on to someone who then sells it on to, say, a black hat hacker, or this information is found publicly from a data breach that's been around. That's a very common one. So if you've been in a data breach previously, simply looking through the emails of who was in that data breach can be one of the best ways to find targets for phishing. And it is quite common. By the way, if anyone does have a question or anything like that, feel free to just interject. I don't mind. I'm an open book when it comes to these kinds of things. But looking at how you would actually go and spot a phishing email, these are generally, it's a relatively well-made phishing email. But you can see that it's not actually from Amazon. You can see Amazon. There's no A there on the sender. You can see that generally it's the information in there is vague. It doesn't include a name. It doesn't include any information that Amazon should know about you or does know about you. Usually most emails will include something like that because they have this. This can change a little bit, and you have to be wary of this when it comes to spear phishing, because people can obtain that information in other ways. And then when you're looking at links, so is the link what you were expecting it to be? If you hover over it, if you're using Firefox or Internet Explorer, it will show up right next to the cursor. If you're not using Internet Explorer, it will show up in the bottom left of your Chrome browser. And that's where you can see where the link leads to. And that will tell you, although it looks like the link goes to Amazon, it doesn't actually go to Amazon, right? It goes to bit.ly/whatever. And that's usually either for analytics or so that they can understand what kind of, they can link you to a page that looks like it's a link to Amazon but isn't. So there's a number of things you can do just to generally avoid phishing or protect yourself from phishing. You can report any emails that you found to the NCSC. So the NCSC have a list of these kinds of email senders and these email providers. And these emails are, once you report a suspicious email, it goes onto spam lists and block lists once they verify it. Don't click any links or attachments. So usually if you get an email and they send you a link or an attachment, it's to the site, it's to one of their sites. But the best way to not get caught out is to go to the site directly. Go to Amazon directly and log in, as opposed to clicking through a link from the email. And warn anyone else in your organization. If you have, say, 30 staff and you've received one of these, it's likely that other people in your organization are going to receive this email or can receive this email. And stopping other people in your organization from doing what you might have gotten close to do can be a great way to deal with this, at least on the individual level. Activating spam filters. I know a lot of email providers like Outlook and Google all come with spam filters already. You know, they have specific spam filters that are fed off the NCSC, that are running off that kind of backend, and they'll have their own service that when you report an email, there will be a report button on your email provider, and that will say, hey, don't click. You know, that will add these people to the spam list so that you don't get caught out by phishing. So we have a little bit of a task here for people to do, and for you guys to go through. I don't know, it shouldn't take too long to do.
I'll try and stick this in the chat. Bear with me.
Yeah, and if it's available for you guys, you know, just head to that link, and there will be actually some examples of phishing emails that I want us to go through, as well as actual like real life phishing emails that I have created that I would send to a business were I to want to hack that business. So once you may have to make an account, or if you already have an account, it'll take you straight through.
Are you all right in clicking this link? Are you trying to hack us?
No, you're okay.
It's safe, don't worry.
Yeah, not yet.
It's good that you're cautious, though.
Yeah, and once you get through and make an account, it'll have a number of different phishing emails and just a wide variety of types of emails that you'll be able to see. Let's see, Matt's just joined. Let's see, Sam. So you have in the top left, you can see the general emails, right? These are common phishing emails that you will be able to see, and you'll be able to know, you know, very few of them contain specific information.
You guys managed to get on okay? Are you all there? Anyone struggling? Oh, good.
Looking good?
I'm there. I'm there. I don't know whether you can see me or not.
That's no problem.
You've got to forgive me voice. I'm not very well.
Oh, it's fine. No problem.
Thanks.
No problem, Sam. Is everybody able to navigate in Mural? I'm conscious that some of you might be new to it. I think, Mike, are you all right with that? Are you able to
I'm just logging
navigate?
on now. Yeah, give us a second. I'll be on there.
No problem.
Have you used Mural before, Sam?
Actually, I can pop it on my screen.
Yeah.
This way you can see it if you can't get in. You can see
Yeah,
what
you
we've
might
got
be
going on.
better just sharing it on screen, Matthew.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see a number of sort of phishing examples here, right? And if you're looking at the top leftmost one, you can tell that the sender doesn't match up. You see my cursor there, the sender up here doesn't match up if you use an Outlook, as well as whether the location is correct, making sure that the numbers are to yours, you know, are to like your location, your number code, so, you know, 44 for the UK, and again hovering over links. Matt, if you want to just double click one of the download emails and just open it up in your browser.
What are these?
On the right hand side. Yeah.
Bear with me.
Right. So if you guys want to go through, take 5-10 minutes and just read through the email, see what you can't find, and make some post-it notes and just write on there what you feel as though is a dead giveaway of whether it's a true email or not.
Are you logged in there, Mike?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, Mike's
Yeah.
in there.
So it's just a case of to zoom, just use your wheel on your mouse.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can
yeah.
Zoom in
fine.
and out and double click for your post-it for anybody that hasn't used it before.
Yep. So these ones over here, if you look on the right hand side, download and open in browser, these are all actual phishing emails that you can downloads that I've created. And if you download them and just open them in your web browser, they will actually show you a phishing email that you can go through and hover over the links and understand where and how hackers will try and edit these emails so that you can be tricked into this.
Sorry, Cam, did you say you could actually, did you want me to open one?
Yeah, just double click. I think the eBay one's the best one. But then, yeah, just drag it to your browser from the download at the bottom of your screen.
Let's have a look. See if we could open that.
Yeah, just drag it to your old browser.
There we
Yeah,
go.
there you go. And you can see that, in whatever email you're using, that would look exactly the same. And it would have the same features. It should look exactly the same as that. And it means that when you're hovering over, like say the button, in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see the fake URL pop up there when you hover over it.
Oh yeah, fakepage.url.
Mhm.
Can you all see that in the bottom corner? Down here. Very good.
Yeah, so there's plenty of sort of telltale signs. A lot of them are the sender. The sender is a big one on who's actually sent the email.
Alan,
Mm-hmm.
if you're able to sort of set the title of the page in the bottom left as fake page URL,
Yeah.
What's to stop them from just changing it to eBay URL?
So you can't change. So if they were to send it to eBay URL, that would send you to eBay. And the intention of these hackers is to get you on one of their pages so that they can then steal your information. So they would make a page that looks exactly like eBay,
Yeah.
but isn't ebay.com,
Yeah.
and will steal your information when you go to that page. So the fake page URL is simply there to illustrate that
it's
know
fake.
this is how you would check when you're hovering over a link if it's actually going to eBay or if it's not.
I was just wondering, because obviously with the title of it, if they were able to manipulate that, be able to sort it. So would they try to create a website that's as close to the eBay as possible then as well? So the URLs.
Yes, exactly right. And that's one of the ways that they try and trick people, and the ways that they can become more advanced, right? They'll try and get eBay, right? If you can get ebay.com, suddenly you're going to trick a lot more people if they're actually checking for ebay.com or something like that.
Yeah, you can spoof those links to make them look as close as possible.
Yeah.
Trick people. So it doesn't always, well, it's never going to be exactly right, but it can be quite close. So you have to be really vigilant with that.
Yeah, exactly.
But do as much to entice you as possible without necessarily having the correct email URL.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the ways that you find a lot of them act, and one of the through lines for a lot of these emails that you'll see is there's an issue, right? You have to come and address this because there's an issue. That's one of the ways they want to essentially engage your lizard brain. So you see this email, they make you afraid, and then they go, oh, I need to click these links, or I need to go and fix this and sort this out as quick as possible. And usually that's not the best way to do it, right? And they're trying to trick you up not only by having an email that looks similar, but having an email that will stop you from thinking and make you act quickly.
And it's always a financial one as well. You've either won £1 million or there's an issue with a bank account or eBay account or internet provider.
It's quite common for there to be financials. It's quite common for there to be, like you say, during COVID, there was massive you may have been exposed to COVID, track and trace. We've sent you this email because of X. And suddenly, everyone's afraid of COVID. So you have to go and sort that out. And it's being wary that those links aren't going to the place that you expect them to, right? It's not being sent from the sender that you expect it to be sent from. It's not got the right images. It's worded wrong. A lot of them purposely word them wrong to catch out people that aren't paying attention.
PayPal and Apple are probably the most numerous attempts at phishing. So always be wary of those.
And like I say, even if it doesn't pique your interest and you don't think it's a phishing email, it's best to just go to the site directly anyway, as opposed to clicking it through the link.
There we go. Fake again at the bottom.
And this was just to show you how easy it is. These emails that I made here, those took me 5 minutes to make 30 of them. From different providers, from different people. And I don't have to get one that's perfect for you. But if I can find, oh yeah, these guys use Microsoft for some of their stuff, or these guys use eBay for some of their stuff, suddenly it becomes a lot more believable to you. And it's just being aware that hackers are trying to trick you with this kind of thing if they're trying hard enough.
Yeah, a lot of the time it's just a numbers game. So with a little bit of information about who you deal with, what accounts you've got and where, if they gather enough targets with that information, they'll just shoot it out, and it's a numbers game. Someone will fall for it eventually.
Shall we move on? I'm just being conscious of time.
Yeah, sure. Let's come out of this then. There we are. Bear with me. Okie dokie. So we'll move on to password security next. And it's probably the most important and effective way of improving your online security. So just by making sure that you've got strong passwords is really going to make all the difference. But the issue is, for years, we've been given mixed messages about what constitutes a strong password. And then to add to that problem, we've also struggled with the age-old battle of security versus convenience. And that's often meant that password crackers have had a really easy time of it. So let's first have a look at and try and understand what the problem with passwords is. I think this extract, this little cartoon from xkcd.com illustrates it quite well. Here you can see how over time we've practically been groomed in a way to create passwords in a certain way, in a certain manner. And they've gradually become more complicated and more difficult to remember. So because we've been told to add additional characters, we've been told to add special characters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase, they've evolved in a very predictable way, and they are particularly easy to crack because of that. The other thing to bear in mind as well is, as our computers and devices have become more powerful, passwords have had to evolve and become more complex to keep up with that and remain secure. So let's be honest, how many people's passwords here start with a capital letter? It's usually one word, yeah. One memorable word, probably a 4-digit number at the end, possibly a date. And then we can't forget the special character, which is probably going to be an exclamation mark. If that rings true for you guys, it's the way it's gone, and everybody's been in the same boat, basically. It's very important that you come out of that trend, change your passwords, make sure you're not using them for the same sites, because if you do, if they're compromised on one site, it means you potentially all your other accounts are compromised as well. So again, that was down to convenience. We've been told to make them more complex, but we don't want to forget them. So we've ended up all creating our passwords in a very similar way over time. And convenience versus security. Usually if something is very convenient, it's easy to use, it usually means that it suffers in the security department. And if it's more secure or overly secure, it usually means that it's very clunky to use. It's difficult to remember and can be quite frustrating.
Just on that point, you may think, oh, that password is really hard to guess because it's loads of symbols and characters and numbers. But the way that these passwords are cracked, it means that you're testing billions and billions of passwords a second. You're not just testing, 100, and it's not one person in front of a computer trying to test or guess. They're testing billions of passwords to make sure that it's the correct password or the wrong password, which is where length comes in and why length is really important.
Yeah, they can also conduct something called a dictionary attack, which essentially, as I mentioned in the last slide, because passwords have evolved in that predictable format, they'll run software that will just basically brute force and check every combination of those particular trends until they break the password. So if you do fall into that format, it becomes very easy for them to crack.
How fast can they crack that then, Matthew? What we're looking at?
As fast as your computer is, essentially.
Yeah.
The faster your device is, the more hashes you can crack.
It depends. It depends on the password, right? So if the password is 13 characters long, it's going to be harder than a password that's 12 and a password that's 11 characters. And the smaller the password becomes, the easier it is to crack. And it's just a battle. You're trying to beat a computer, and the only way that they can guess it a lot of the time is by looking at your old passwords or trying every password.
Yeah. So a few things to avoid when dealing with your passwords. Try not to store your passwords in plain text on your device. Again, if someone gets into your computer, it's there for them to read and it's not encrypted in any way. Try not to use your username or real name, birthday, phone number, any easily identifiable information in your password. Don't use
like me using all of these things.
We've been groomed in a way to actually do it this way. So everybody's got very similar formats of passwords. So it's really important that we get out of these trends and make them more complex and less easy to crack. So don't use, another trend that people use is to make things easy to remember is they'll use an easy keyboard combination like ABCD or QWERTY or QAZ. And that's obviously another trend that's very easy to try and crack. Don't write down your passwords unless you know they can be easily, safely put away. I think back in the 80s, you used to see passwords on a Post-it note stuck on the monitor. I think we've moved past those days, but then there was a period of time when it was just under no circumstances write down your password. But to be fair, if you know that it's going to be safe, you know that no one else knows where it is, then that's absolutely fine if you find it hard to remember. Don't reuse your passwords. I've mentioned before, if one site's compromised, then it's going to leave you wide open. All your other accounts that have that one same password are potentially compromised. So if your details compromised in a data breach, for example, Facebook, you've got your password and your email address in there as your login credentials. That then goes into a dump, and hackers can get hold of that information. Then just try it on every other account that you've got. So what constitutes a good password? So they need to contain uppercase, lowercase, symbols and numbers, which we all know anyway. Usually the criteria for creating a password comes up with that. Generally speaking, the longer the better. And it's a good idea to change them regularly. They need to be more than 12 characters long now. I would say 16 characters and more is going to be a safe bet. And they've got to be memorable and unique, of course. The best way to get around this is to create passphrases rather than passwords. So if you come up with a saying or a phrase that's memorable to you, like my daughter's name is Bella, she is 9 years old, something like that, maybe not quite that long, but you get the idea. So another way to make sure that we've got safe, all our passwords safe, is to use a password manager. And password managers are really the best and easiest way to make sure that you've got a different password for every account that you have. It will be stored in an encrypted vault usually, and you only need to remember one secure password or passphrase to access that. And when we advise using a password manager, a lot of times people say, oh, it's okay, I use my browser. And that's really not a very good way to secure your passwords at all, because again, if someone gets into your browser, it's not protected. They can just go onto the burger and look at all your stored passwords on there. We recommend LastPass. There are other passwords out there. I actually use a different one now, but it's a good idea to have a shop around and see what suits you best. So we've got another little mural here. I'll just get the link in the chat for you.
There you go. I've dropped it in.
Oh, have you got it in? Brilliant.
Yep. And just make a couple passwords and try and, think of the passphrases necessarily more than the passwords.
Yeah, so just drop a post-it now and see if you can come up with what you think is going to be a memorable but secure password.
Out of curiosity, didn't they change the guidance on that 6 months password changes? Didn't they say because there was too many people forgetting them and all that type of carry on? There was government guidance that came out.
Yeah, it changes all the time. The current one from the NTSC is to make 3 random words that include, your special characters and numbers and whatnot. But it does change. The longer the better, as I say, and it also does depend on what account you're creating. Sometimes the particular account will only allow you to use certain characters in a certain length. So that's really why using a password manager, it's going to do all that for you. They can generate passwords for you, and they store them obviously, so you never forget them. It's also with that, they usually have quite a good user interface as well, so you can check your passwords. They'll usually tell you if they've been duplicated and used for different accounts. And they'll also tell you when they need changing as well in a lot of cases. Not only that, they're offering new services as well. So you can store things like your payment details on there, and things like addresses, autofills that, again, usually a lot of people would put in their browser and ask their browser to remember it for them. So they've got autofill on forms. Again, probably not the best idea, but in any password manager, that'll be a lot more safe.
Storing passwords in the browser is one of the most annoying things ever, especially when you've got staff, because they don't remember the passwords then. And if the browser needs to be refreshed, that's it, they're scuppered. Yeah.
And this is honestly the best advice, right? You can sit here and make passwords all day, but the best advice, but password managers will make strong passwords for you and save them for you. So long as you remember one password that is strong, the password manager will do the rest.
So what password manager are you recommending?
LastPass is good. They have a good thing with, especially if you have an organization or things like LastPass, it's really useful to have or an organization or staff, because you can have one account that manages the rest of the staff. So if they forget their master password, you can change their master password so that they can log in and then change it back to something that they don't know, that they know. And LastPass is a lot of them do the same thing, right? A lot of them have the same features. A lot of them act the same way. But the security element comes from the encryption on your device and the encryption in the cloud that can only be accessed once you put in that master password.
There was a service provider hacked not so long ago, wasn't there, with the passwords?
It's quite possible. A lot of the time, like you say, I don't know if there was. One doesn't spring to mind, but it's quite possible that these kinds of, that they get hacked, which is why you should almost always try and have a local version of it.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's important to remember that nothing is 100% secure. So it's possible that these things could be hacked, but usually with a password manager, everything's encrypted anyway. So it'll be very difficult if anyone gets in there to actually decipher what your passwords are.
And this is onto Cyber Essentials for you, Mike. One of the biggest things that they ask for, and you have to say that you do this if you're doing a Cyber Essentials test, is have you changed all the default passwords on every device you use?
Yeah.
So that's a big thing.
Does that mean that you can't replicate the passwords on different machines?
You shouldn't replicate the passwords on different machines, but their recommendation is changing the default password on every machine.
Yeah. Okay.
You will get asked that for your Cyber Essentials.
Yeah.
Has everybody made their password? Is everyone happy with that? Yeah.
I think I made 2.
Okay, brilliant. Right, let's move on then. Just conscious of time. Okay. So just to continue from password, sorry, Callum, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the passwords that they put in there look relatively secure.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're worrying us, Callum.
Don't worry about it.
Well, after that last session, that last bit there, I was just like, I need to come up with something amazing.
Well, you just need to come up with something that you can remember and that's long enough, right? Should be the only 2 qualities that you look for. Is it memorable, and is it long enough, and have I posted it publicly somewhere? Which is never do that.
Yeah, brilliant. So extending from password security, excuse me, another way to ensure that you've got that extra layer of security is 2-factor authentication. Because a lot of us still do use weak passwords, and as I mentioned, nothing's 100% secure. Even using strong passwords might not be enough to stop unauthorized access if the accounts that you protect with it are compromised in a data breach. So 2FA is an added layer of protection that really we should all be doing now, wherever possible. And it makes it extremely difficult for attackers to gain unauthorized access to, your user accounts, your data, business network, and any computer systems that you're trying to protect.
Speaking as an attacker, it's very annoying, right? It's something that if you come up against, you almost always try and find another way than try and break 2FA.
Yeah. So what is 2FA? So it's basically a security mechanism that requires 2 types of credentials to authenticate whoever's trying to gain access. And it's designed to provide an additional layer of validation that, it'll basically minimize security breaches. So it's a way to confirm users' claimed identities by using a combination of 2 different factors. So these could be any combination of the things you see on the screen there, factors on screen. So it could be something that you know, something that they have, or something that they are, or it could even be something that you do or somewhere you are.
So patting your nose and rubbing your head can be
in front of a camera.
In front of a camera can be.
Okay, so another aspect, security questions. So quite often, particularly if you forget your password for like a bank account or any account really, it'll ask you for a secret question. Just a couple of things to bear in mind when you're creating these. Try and make sure that if you have a security question, the answer is not obviously on any of your social media accounts. So what a social engineer will do is they'll try and answer those security questions by finding out details that you've put on social media. So make sure the answer can't be found online. A good way to avoid doing that is just create a false answer, and that will actually protect your real information. So don't use any, again, sensitive information for your security questions. And store your answers somewhere like your password manager, which we've just gone through. Again, you can store all sorts in there, and they're generally getting better and better at storing different things for you. Okie dokie. Next up, we've got third-party authenticators. This is another way to add that two-factor authentication. And there's a number of different authenticator apps which will basically generate a randomly and constantly refreshing code. And then you can use that rather than sending an SMS or using another method. And a big benefit of these is that they usually continue to work even when you're not on the internet or not connected. And we've got a few examples. Google Authenticator is very good. There's one called Authy, and Microsoft have an authenticator as well.
I don't know.
Again, sorry, go on.
I don't know if any of you guys have ever played an online MMO, but World of Warcraft used to sell a little machine that you would buy that would have a rotating code that you would then use to log into your account. And it's the same concept as what you have on an application there.
Yeah, brilliant. And again, more and more password managers are starting to do it as well. Yeah. Okay, so we're at 8 minutes past 3. I think we've done well. I earned ourselves a 10-minute break, so I'm going to put the kettle on and see you back at 20 past.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
Is that all right, guys?
Yeah.
Speaking of which. Hey, Mike, how's it going?
So do you guys offer consultancy then for the Cyber Essentials?
We don't actually do Cyber Essentials, unfortunately. We have a Cyber Essentials Plus assessor, but we don't do Cyber Essentials.
Right.
This is, for us, it's useful, and for a lot of companies, we recommend they get it. But that's one of the things we're essentially working towards in our company.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there anything that sort of tripped you up, or that you feel as though you don't know? I'm assuming you've seen the sheet of questions that they ask you.
I had a quick flick through them. Most of them looked all right, but it's just trying to get a bit more knowledge of common pitfalls,
Yeah.
I do come from an IT background anyway, so this isn't sort of new to me. It's just trying to get some tips of what I need to do before we start looking at consultancy.
Right. Yeah, a lot of it's like, do you have a firewall on your devices, or from your, a firewall before anything comes into your internal network? Do you have?
Do they look in? Do they accept router firewalls? Is that acceptable as long as it's closed? Or?
I can ask my Cyber Essentials Plus assessor, who sat right next to me. Did they accept router firewalls? Yes, they do.
They do.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're a router firewall, that's fine. Honestly, they're just looking for answers to the questions that are the correct, right? The secure answer. So it doesn't matter too much how you've got it, so long as you have it. Like antivirus. You don't mind which antivirus you have, so long as you have one of them.
Yeah, we're in the process of updating all the computers. Some of them we sort of left. They were still running 7, because I know that's part of the thing, that everything patched properly and that sort of stuff. So yeah, we're in the process of doing all that at the moment and updating Office and the rest.
Yeah,
we're ready just before we know that's going to trip us up otherwise. So
we know. Yeah, Windows 7 will just trip you up because it's no longer supported.
Yeah.
And one of the questions again is, do you have a 24-hour patching policy?
Yeah.
And you can't patch Windows 7 because it doesn't have patches.
Yeah. Does it matter about computers being in a work group rather than a domain? Do they take any viewpoint of that?
They don't mind if you have a domain or you don't. So long as whatever you're using is secure, right? And each individual device gets to its standard of security, and they all have the same level of security, right? So they all have the same updates. They all have the same 48-hour security patches, etc.
In terms of shared drives and things like that, then does it have to be password protected, or can you have sort of open folders for? Does that come into it or not?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I
don't know how deep it goes. That's me query.
Yeah. Okay. So Cyber Essentials, you should be able to answer all the questions. I don't think it goes that deep.
Right.
And the questionnaire that they give you, it's only when you go for your Cyber Essentials Plus that they actually start testing that stuff, and that checking that your answers match what you put down.
Yeah, I have a feeling it will go down the Cyber Essentials Plus eventually.
Well, if you do want Cyber Essentials Plus, you have to get it within 6 months of getting Cyber Essentials.
Right.
Because otherwise they decide that it's not, your Cyber Essentials is out of date because the environment might have changed within those 6 months, and then you come back for the Cyber Essentials Plus. But once you get the Cyber Essentials Plus, it lasts a year.
Yeah, I was going to say that Dev said we've got to be recertified every year for whatever we go for. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the way to look at Cyber Essentials is the baseline of security, right? Yeah. And then you go to Cyber Essentials Plus, and then you go to things like penetration testing and ensuring that actually even if you meet that baseline, you're actually keeping data securely. You've not got any vulnerabilities in your environment. Whereas Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus don't, although they test for some of that with Plus, it's not comprehensive. And if you are worried about data security, a penetration test is the best way to go once you've got that certifications.
How often would you recommend that penetration testing happens then, Callum?
If you control or store any data on individuals or people, you should be under, which we'll come on to later, under GDPR, you should be getting one every year. The GDPR regulation 31D, I'm glad I know that, it says you have to do regular testing of any systems to ensure security. And failure to do that can lead to some stuff which we'll go over later.
Yeah, we're going to be covering GDPR shortly, so there's all the ins and outs of that and that article.
Because you've got with GDPR, you've got the whole sort of tech meets legal, haven't you? It's kind of
precisely, yeah.
And like we do, obviously, you guys know from when you were an accelerator with us, we do the legal one-to-ones with Endeavour Law, and pretty much all of the businesses that we're working with are storing customer data.
Yeah.
So it's normally right up there in terms of the requirements that they have when they do the surgeries with Endeavour. It's kind of understanding the legislation, the legal side, and then how you can protect it technically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you can think you've protected it, get a penetration test, and find out you've not protected it at all. And that's why they have regular testing in GDPR, because even without that kind of thing, you know, even if you think you have it, coming in and checking it and making sure it can highlight things that you didn't even know existed. Is everyone back then?
I think we're nearly there.
Are we all back?
We're just waiting for those. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we're all back. Thanks, Sam.
Perfect.
Okie dokie. I think, Callum, you've got the next section, haven't you? So we're going to cover wireless networks next.
Wicked. Yeah, so wireless networks and wireless security. We'll be going over generally. It's a couple settings or things you can change that will actually improve the security of your wireless networks, as well as some, you know, whether this is your home network or your office network. These are things that you can just change a setting on, and some practical stuff that you can do that will help improve. So choosing your location of your wireless access point carefully is an important thing. And you may not think it, but if you're leeching your wireless network all over your street, it can lead to some stuff that we'll go on to next, and as well as checking the area. So if someone can get direct access to your router, suddenly, you know, if they can plug anything in, they can start interacting with that router without even being on the network, or interacting with other devices without even being on the network. And most routers have something called a signal strength, or a output strength, and you can change that based on the range of things that you want to access it. So if you're only in one room and you only want things to access it, maybe you only need it on its lowest strength, so that things across the street can't access it, or an attacker from across the way can't try and access it at least.
What can be plugged into your router then? Is it a piece of hardware? Is it something like a
yeah? So
USB stick type thing? Is it?
Yeah. So a lot of them do have USBs, and that could be an attack vector to exploit your router. But a lot of the time, you can plug a computer directly in there with an Ethernet port. So you just plug a computer in, plug it into your router. And it will be on your network. It won't need to put in the password. It won't need to do anything like that. And if your router's sat around, say it's in a guest lobby, or it's in a a reception area, then someone doing that can be catastrophic because they don't need to know your password. They're already on your network. And that means they have access to every other device that is on that network unless you have things called device isolation. A couple sort of wireless attacks, and although these aren't as common as they used to be, the bottom two are quite important to know about. Ward driving and ward chalking. So ward driving is when you go around and you look for what Wi-Fi hotspots or what wireless networks are around you, and at what location in the area. And there's hundreds of websites out there that give you a Google Map view, and say you found out someone's Wi-Fi name. It's called an SSID. Say you found out someone's Wi-Fi name, you could then search that Wi-Fi name, and it will tell you the location of that person using that Wi-Fi. Or it will tell you the location of that Wi-Fi hotspot. Not as common as it used to be, and not too much of a worry. The bottom two can be quite a worry. So Wi-Fi disassociation. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's some really funny videos online, although it's completely illegal, of people partying next door, and then a hacker's sat in his room and they're being too loud, so he just disconnects their speaker from their internet. And you can do this on initial, so older routers are using a standard called WPA2, and this suffers from this vulnerability, and it would allow anyone to look at it and just disconnect something from your network unless it has certain mitigations in place. Brute force attacks, again, can you guess the password of your router? Can you try and guess the password of whatever encryption they're using? Moving on to some of the ways that you can secure your Wi-Fi networks. I'll get onto this. So use WPA2 PSK. So if you know how if you go to your router settings, it will be on the little white card stuck onto the back of the router, or you can go to in your web browser, if you've put in 192.168.0.1, that will usually take you to your router's website, because every router has a website. And that's where you can change your configurations when you put in the password that's on the bottom of the router. Make sure that it's on WPA PSK and using AES or WPA3. I'll show you an example of this in the next slide. That's in there, and I'll show you sort of what it looks like on our router. And then make sure you're using a secure password. These can be broken. The passwords that you use can be broken the same way that a password might be broken. But the passwords for a router are in the air. So if someone's nearby and they capture the password and then they try and crack it, it opens up your Wi-Fi network to having a device put onto it without them even knowing your password. Checking for rogue access points. Is the Wi-Fi near you that has a similar name? Is the Wi-Fi that has a name that says click me or free internet? And usually that's a hacker trying to pretend to be something so that they can act as a man in the middle. And these are quite easy to spot. It's kind of a social engineering attack, right? We're trying to make you click on that Wi-Fi as opposed to another Wi-Fi so that we can get that information and not the secure Wi-Fi. Provide a separate network for your guests. This is quite easy, and almost every router on the settings page again has a enable guest network. When you enable a guest network, it has something called device isolation. So they connect to that thingy and they can't see any other devices on that network. They can't look at your internal computers. They can't look at everyone else's device. All they can see is their own device and the router. That's it. They can't mess around with anything. And it's a security feature on purpose. A lot of the time you might need the devices to see each other in your network, but your guests don't need to interact with one another. Hiding your network name if everything's already connected. So if every device that you ever want to connect to that is already connected, you can hide your network name in the settings, and it will allow you to keep the devices connected, but not connect anymore. And enable MAC authentication, which it can be a little bit complex, that one, but essentially it's picking the devices that you want to have on your network and that you want to allow in your network. And this is a general overview of what the settings page looked like. So you can see our Wi-Fi here. You want to be using IPA2, PSK, and AES. And when you go to that 192.168.0.1, that's why it'll show you. It'll show you a list of different settings, and have a look and make sure that that is set, because that makes it a whole lot harder for someone to get that password and crack it.
Okie dokie, moving on to some advice for remote workers. So if you are having to work outside of the office, where usually your protection is, there's some good tips here for making sure that you know, you're not going to be offering any low-hanging fruit. So first of all, if you're using work devices at home, try not to share your PC with anyone. So don't let the kids on it. Even your partner, because you never know if that half-written email could be sent by accident. So it's best just to make sure that you've got exclusive access to that device. Keep it digital. Now, if you do need to print anything at home, do make sure that you you've got a shredder and that you're shredding all of your documents. Dumpster diving is a real thing. And some social engineers have got really good at it. There's been cases of people making up to £100,000 just from going through people's bins and piecing together sensitive information and then engaging in fraudulent activity. So very important to shred or not print at all, if at all possible. Verify your calls. So quite often attackers will phone known targets and pretend to be the IT department or some other departments, and obviously gain information that way. So if you're not 100% sure who's calling you, it's a good idea to call back and just double check that they are who they say they are. Patch your computer. Quite often operating systems will do this automatically, but just make sure that any software that you're using is updated either automatically or check on a regular basis, just to make sure that it's the latest version of whatever you're using. Beware of phishing. Of course, we've covered this. Just be vigilant with your emails. Make sure that, again, if there's anything being sent from the office, just double check that it has actually come from the person that you think it is. Don't click on links if you can help it, or unless you know 100% that it's from who they say it's from. Use a VPN. So VPN is virtual private network, and that's another way of ensuring that you have just end-to-end connection and a secure connection directly. So it means that nobody can, from outside of that connection, can get themselves into there. Oh, backwards. Excuse me. Physical security. A lot of this is common sense. So making sure that your doors are locked, making sure that any devices, when they're not in use, they're going to be put somewhere that is secure and no one can get hold of them. Again, if you leave your laptop on the passenger side of your car with the window open while you pop into the shop, things like that, I mean, you're asking for trouble. So it's always important to make sure that you're keeping your devices and be mindful of where they are and whether they're in the reach of anyone that they shouldn't be. Beware of SMS, again, referring back to the smishing type of phishing. Again, just check that it's from who they say it's from, and make sure that you don't click on anything there. Caution with Wi-Fi, again, we've just covered that. So make sure that when you do get a new device or a new router, you're changing that password and making sure that your access controls are as best as they can be. Again, that ties in with home Wi-Fi protection. Changing passwords, again, very important, but as we've covered, try and use a password manager. Make sure your computer's locked when you're away from it. It's a really good idea to be in that habit all of the time. So if you do walk away from a device, it's not open for a passerby if you're in a public area, for example. Encryption of your hard drives. Quite a few hard drives now come with built-in encryption, but if they don't, it's worthwhile just doing a little bit of research into how to encrypt your drive, so that, again, if you get anybody that's inside your system, they're not going to be able to read any plain text or decrypt your hard drive. And then virtual meeting hygiene, which is the next slide. As we've all had to work during the pandemic, we've had to work from home. A lot of us have conducted our meetings online. And of course, when we've had to do this, none of us have been trained how to do this securely. So there's a few little tips here just to make sure that you're as secure as you possibly can be when you're engaged in an online meeting. So try not to share links. Again, you don't know what the link may be, and it could affect everybody in the call. Try not to use consumer grade software. So if you're just using a free version, that can often leave you vulnerable to various attacks as well. Don't allow participants to screen share by default. Again, you don't know what's going to pop up there, and it could end up being embarrassing, or there could be something in the background that could be used as information to attack. Don't use video call if you don't need to. Now, this is a funny one. I saw on LinkedIn, I think it was yesterday, there was a poll. Is it rude to not share your video during a meeting? And I think the poll winner was, it depends. And I think it does, depending on the meeting and whether you're required to have your video on. Just bear in mind that if you're not necessarily needed to put your video on, it actually lowers the bandwidth, so it's a little bit more secure. And again, if you're not aware of what's in your background, there could be something there. So if you can get away with not putting your video on, it's a good thing to do, providing that it's PC for the meeting. Don't record meetings unless you need to. Again, this could be a GDPR issue, so you really need permission from all attendees to actually record the meeting, make sure that they're happy with that. Some do's: make sure you lock the meeting. Also, it's a good idea to eject participants when the meeting's finished. Again, you can often get instances where people might be lingering in the background after the meeting's finished, and maybe the hosts of the meeting are discussing the meeting afterwards, and might not be aware that someone's listening in. Use the latest version of the software as well, of course. Make sure that your software is updated and you've got the latest version, and make sure that your password protection is on. Waiting room features are a really good feature. They're great to use and can help you, again, with information security when you're discussing things with different departments. And again, just make sure that all of your staff are trained to the same level. So anybody that's hosting meetings are up to speed with what your policies are as a business. Okie dokie, I'll pop you back on, Callum.
Perfect. Website security. There's a number of things that we can do to help or hinder website security, and hopefully we'll go over a couple of those and at least try and make some of the websites that you guys are probably using more secure, even in a little bit of a way. So how many people actually collect sensitive information? So under GDPR, sensitive information is anything that can be used to identify an individual either by itself or with another piece of information. So does anyone like collect email addresses or anything like that through their website? Yeah, Sam does. Yeah, anybody else?
Mike, do you?
I don't collect them through, actually I do collect them through my website, but the website's under maintenance at the moment. But I do on behalf of our clients.
Right.
We manage events and things, so
right.
I do it through that.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, hopefully this will be of some use to them.
It absolutely is. Thank you very much.
So, and any of you who has a website, how would you know, or who would know if their website was hacked? Right. It's easy to say, oh, I definitely know that I'm collecting information, but are you checking whether it's hacked as well?
I think the only reason why I'd know is if someone was to receive something malicious, or you would see yourself that something has changed and it's not quite right.
Yeah.
I think unless you're on the ball and checking it as you should be daily, you know, and maybe if you can get a notification to your email every time there's been something changed on the back, because I manage our clients' websites as well, and there's no notifications to say that the website's been changed when I change it or update anything. But it might be worthwhile any of the users getting a confirmation to say that it's been updated when it has been updated. That might be worthwhile.
Well, exactly right, and that's the kind of thing that we're looking for, or that you should probably have, because if something changes, whether, you know, say a hacker gets on there. And they're looking to steal credit card information or any sensitive information that is passing through that website, they'll immediately, you know, they don't want to get found out because that information is valuable to them. They're not going to start changing unless they really, like some hacktivist group really wants to say, look at what we did, or, you know, some competitor wants to make it look like you're not secure. The way that these people try and work is they're going to try and steal that data from you as it comes in, or from the database or the back end. So unless you know, or you're monitoring that type of thing, it's, you know, you may never find out if a website is hacked. And I think it's important to have those systems in place. It might just be a little bit of something to think about in the future. So how are websites attacked usually? A lot of the time, the same way with most things, it's using automated scanners. They're looking for websites that aren't updated or aren't updated regularly. Using these scanners, say they find a vulnerability, and they'll make a system that will check hundreds of thousands of websites to find if they're insecure. Right? It's not just one hacker looking for a specific website and then going, oh yeah, that one's insecure. It's a machine going through lots and lots of websites and going specifically, and once that's flagged, saying, oh, that site's insecure, they can then take the next step and, you know, harvest credit card details, harvest user information, steal what user information is there. And like I said, they're not trying to do it so that everyone knows. They're trying to do it so that nobody knows, because the longer that they go undetected, the more likely they are to find out about, you know, the more likely to get more information they are. And there's been cases in the past where whole networks of websites have been used to sort of host illegal activity and steal data without the knowledge of loads of people. And this is, you know, this can be a massive issue. And one of the issues that you find is, you know, most websites, and this is why, you know, from here on, at least a little bit, we're going to be targeting WordPress a little bit, because it's the most common CRM, right? Almost, you know, almost 60% of websites there use WordPress, or 60% of websites have a WordPress backend. And it's important that at least you learn a bit about the security from there, or ways that you can check the security of whatever website you're using. So if we move on to WP Scan, this is one of the things. So one of the requirements for Cyber Essentials is vulnerability scanning usually, or ensuring that there's no vulnerabilities. Same with GDPR. And what WP Scan is, it's a free tool. It can be a little bit technical to set up, but you can put it on Windows, you can put it on Linux, or we can, you know, we offer a vulnerability assessment service which will do all of this. It will protect your site from these automated scanners. So if an attacker is specifically trying to target you, that's a different story. But from these vulnerability scanners where these automated vulnerability scanners that will pop up to an attacker and say, hey, attack these because they're insecure, this is the type of thing that it will protect you against. Because WordPress in the past has been really bad for this. Older versions of WordPress didn't have automatic updates. They didn't have automatic plugin updates. And even now, automatic plugin updates are disabled. You have to go in there and actually activate automatic updates for plugins. And WordPress, a WP scan goes through and it checks your plugins, it checks your themes, and it checks your WordPress, and it goes, all this, these are outdated, these are up to date, and it will show a bit of an example in a second. And one of the things that most people don't know is your WP admin. If you keep your WP admin, you know, where it is, /WP admin or / whatever, this can be a normal vulnerability on its own, because when someone pops it up, older versions of WordPress, WordPress is open, right? So everybody knows where everything is on the website usually, unless you take time to obfuscate that or hide that. With /WP admin being open, it can allow attacker to try and brute force accounts to find you know, account information elsewhere, and see if you have any passwords or emails, and then try them on your WP admin. And if you're using the same password that you were using somewhere else, suddenly they have logins to your WP admin or to your actual website, which you don't want that, right? Not only for reputational stuff, but also for the data that you're collecting. And one of the things you may not know, and I know Yoast is a very common SEO plugin. If you go to author-sitemap.xml, it will tell you the user that is used to publish most blogs on that site. It will tell you the user that is used to publish, and the account on the back end that is used to publish that. So you can see the URL there, Sticks and Stones in New Zealand, and their main author is Carla. And that is almost certainly the username of the login that they use on the back end. That's, you know, quite common. And if you're using Yoast, this is generated automatically. As soon as you start your Yoast, this is generated. We'll move on to the sort of the next slide, and this is just a bit of a demo of how WP admin works and what it kind of does. It may be too technical for some people, but the people it's not too technical for will benefit massively. You know, for vulnerability assessments and things like that, we include all this in our vulnerability assessments and go through, and it's a day-long process on checking different things on the site and making sure that all of this is secure, as well as, you know, loads of other different stuff, which we move on to the web application attack surface. Very, you know.
What's happening here, Callum? Sorry,
yeah.
what was happening there? I saw it.
So this is just a little bit of a command line. It's just a tool that you would run if you go back, Matthew. This is WP Scan. It's a tool that you would run against a website that will check the plugins. And this is just a command. You run it once, and then it will check itself, the plugins and the themes. You create an account on their site, you run this tool, and it will check the security of all the plugins, all the themes, and the WordPress version. It's really easy to use, and it's actually surprising how common it is to catch people out with vulnerabilities. We just ran it against our site there. I wouldn't worry and I wouldn't hang too much on this, but it just checks common misconfigurations and common issues that you will find on a WordPress site. And this is why websites are so open to attack a lot of the time, is because they have so much of an attack surface, right? This is taken from OWASP, but each one of these stages has a different subheading. It's configuration, deployment, right? How is it configured? how are they managing users? How are they gathering can you gather information about it? Can you gather user information like we saw with that Yoast plugin? API testing. So do they have backend stuff? And it's a huge attack surface which can catch out a lot of businesses. And as we were saying before, can be their main sort of port of call, right? A lot of businesses run off their website, and if their website isn't secure, their business isn't secure. And we'll move on to sort of the GDPR. As we were saying, this is the GDPR earlier, the GDPR 31B. It's expected that either you do this yourself or you get it done by someone else, and it's a safeguard against these misconfigurations that you don't know about, right? You might think that your site is secure, you might think that you're hosting data securely, and this is what makes sure that you're actually testing it and that you're actually making sure that it is secure by someone actually coming in and testing the environment. Which leads us on to the more broader GDPR with Matthew.
Thanks, man.
Before you go into that, can I just ask a quick question? So if you've got a WordPress website, plugins and themes aren't up to date, does that mean that basically is that a way in for attackers basically to tap into all aspects of your business?
On a WordPress site, that is the most common way an attacker would get in.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that every WordPress site that has out of date or not up to date plugins is insecure.
Right.
But a lot of the time, those updates include security updates, and those security updates are the things that will patch these issues and will make sure that these issues don't exist anymore. And you know, now and then there's a balance that has to be struck there between you know, if I update this plugin, is the site going to break completely? Which is quite common.
Yeah, things are a nightmare, aren't they, with WordPress and all that carry on.
Precisely, yeah. And you know, sometimes things break completely, but if it's if you're using something like WordPress Scan, it will allow you to check that plugin's insecure, or if you get, you know, a vulnerability assessment, it will allow you to say that plugin's insecure, and even though the site isn't updated and it breaks it, I really need to put time into fixing that plugin or fixing the update, because it will make the rest of the site less secure.
And I guess you've got to be careful about the type of plugins you use, haven't you? Because a lot of people are, you know, amateur coders developing themes and so on. If you're buying something or getting something free online that you think looks nice, or you know, I think I've heard it said the more plugins that you're using, the more at risk you are, because more can go wrong on it. You know, technically,
absolutely.
On the security side as well. Yeah.
100%.
And of course, a lot of these plugins they're created for, again, convenience, so they're not created with security by design. So it can leave a site wide open.
It's very worrying, isn't it?
It can be. If only there was a company that did cybersecurity that
I know, yeah.
tell you about this.
Seaside University, yeah.
Okay then, guys, I think we'll go through. I hope we haven't lost you on the technical bit there, but I'm sure you get the general idea. We're going to touch on GDPR, a more broader bird's eye view of GDPR now, and just define it and discuss why it's important. So GDPR came into effect on the 25th of May in 2018, and very quickly it caught out over 200,000 businesses in just its first 12 months. And fines totaled 56 million euros, and Google actually picked up the bill for 50 million of that. So in this section, we'll just summarize the legislation for you and give you a few tips on what's required, how to stay compliant, and really just to avoid being fined. We'll also take a look at a couple of case studies if we've got time. I think we're getting quite close, so I'll move swiftly on. So what is GDPR? So it's the European law that governs what companies and organizations are allowed to do with your personal data. And it was introduced because the previous data protection law, which was created back in the 90s, I think 1995 or so, was created before we had all the smartphones and devices essentially that are capable of collecting huge amounts of sensitive information about us. And then what happened, of course, over time as big tech like Google and Facebook started to get hold of this data, and they've been able to collect it and profit from its use, mostly by engaging in targeted marketing or selling to third parties so they can do the same. So penalties for non-compliance, the big penalty is 4% of annual turnover or up to 20 million euros, and it's whichever's highest. There is a lower tier of that, which is 10 million euros or 2% of annual turnover, but it can be a huge, huge fine. So you've got to be very, very careful that when you're processing data, you are making sure that you're compliant with GDPR. So storage needs to be justified. So if you haven't got a good reason for providing, if you can't provide a good reason for having it, it could mean facing those penalties. Of course, when data is lost due to a lack of security, we have data breaches. I'm not sure why that title is not loaded, but this section is about data breaches, and a data breach is defined as the unintentional or intentional release of secure or private or confidential information to an untrusted environment. You might have also heard them referred to as unintentional information disclosure or data leak or information leakage and data spill. So let's just have a quick look at what happened to British Airways. So what happened here in 2018, the systems were successfully attacked, and they were then infiltrated and details were modified to steal the details of any new entries that were added to their database, and personal and financial information of 380,000 of their passengers have been compromised. And this was simply done by running a script on British Airways baggage claim information page. So again, going back to website insecurity, this is how it was compromised. And it wasn't until a couple of months later that BA was made aware of the breach and notified the ICO, which is the Information Commissioner's Office. And they then decided to issue them with one of the largest GDPR fines to date. It was a whopping £183 million. So obviously unhappy with that, they contested the fine, and after a long 2-year battle in the courts, they managed to get that reduced to just £20 million. But it was ruled that they'd failed to implement adequate security measures to protect the login details and names and addresses of 9 million customers, including payment card numbers of around 2,208 of them. So a huge amount of data lost there from quite a simple hole in their security. Another big GDPR penalty was to Marriott. And what happened here was they acquired a smaller company called Starwood Hotels, and that was bought by Marriott after it had fallen victim to a cyber attack 2 years before the acquisition actually took place. And that was in 2016. And because of a lack of due diligence on the part of Marriott, this meant that the attacker remained on the system in the Starwood system and was able to access the personal details of 339 million guests. And the kind of data that they got hold of was names, email addresses, phone numbers, their arrival and departure details, even the membership type and status. And again, when it got to the ICO, they ended up fining Marriott £18.4 million for failing to protect their customers' details. So that's how serious it can be. Obviously, these guys are, they're big companies. But again, when you're starting up a company, quite often you might have associations with these bigger companies that are making mistakes, and you really need to know how that's going to impact your business. Okay, we managed to squeeze those in. We've got a few free resources for you which you might find handy. Firstly, would say it's a great idea to pop over to the NCSC website, and I'll pop links in the chat for you shortly. They do an annual review every year. I don't think we've had a 2021 review yet, but it's really great practice just to pop over to that website and see what the latest trends are. It can keep you up to speed on what's happening, what attackers are up to, and how best to really protect yourself. And a bit of a fun one here. This is Darknet Diaries. It's hosted by a chap called Jack Resider. It's a podcast, and it's true stories from the dark side of the internet. So there's great interviews with real hackers and people that have been either the victim of big hacks or cybercrime, or the attackers themselves and how they've done things, or even just people that have fallen into things like credit card duplication and credit card fraud, and it's got out of hand. So that's a really fun way to learn about some of the hacking that's taken place. And I think that nicely brings us to the end. So if you guys have got any questions, fire away.
Super slick, guys. Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yes, shoot.
Do you remember your secure passwords, everyone?
Aha,
Do you
yes.
remember what your passwords were? No, then they weren't secure enough. They weren't.
I
Yeah,
still
if
put
you
on my
forgot
same
your-
passwords.
Say that
Sorry?
again,
Pardon?
Sam.
I still use the same passwords
Well-
for years, and no one knows them. And it is a sentence with a few other bits and bobs in between it all. So I've been quite lucky, touch wood.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? If you're reusing that password, it only takes one site to be breached, and then that password to be breached on every other site.
Yeah, I make some cracking passwords for my clients. And leave it up to them to rechange them once I hand things over.
Yeah, I bet.
You can have some fun with it, can't you? Really?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the takeaways for me today, to change passwords. I think so. I've been
Yeah.
using the same one or two for the last 10 years on everything.
Well, there you go then. Yeah, definitely.
There is a you might have mentioned it earlier. There is a website you can go on where you can test your password, can't you? But I've always found that that's concerned me that I'm putting my website in, because you get like a rating, don't you, from that site to say how strong your password is.
Survivingpwn.com, isn't it? And
But
the
one thing that worries me about that is you're actually putting your password in.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I don't think I'll trust that.
So there's a couple sites that do that. Some of them are hosted by people who are like trusted in the community, and you
Right.
wouldn't you would hope that they do it, but the best way to do it is just set known secure passwords that you know is secure, right? And the longer it is and the more numbers and symbols you have in there, the more secure it is. And that's all that website will tell you, right? Is the longer it is and the more sort of symbols and numbers you have.
Is it the one where it tells you how many years it takes to crack? There's
Yes,
one like that, isn't
I've
there?
used that before.
Yeah.
The problem being that the algorithm's only going to be as good as what the person who has coded it. So as long as you think that your password is secure and long enough and has the relevant characters and numbers and whatnot in it, then I don't think there's any point in checking it.
No, I think the main takeaway is just try and avoid how, if you haven't changed your passwords for a long time, there's a good chance that you fall into that trap of, just adding symbols to the same password that you've used for years. And that's when you're in danger, because, you've got your capital letter start, you've got your one word, you've got your 4 digits, and then an exclamation mark. And it's so common. We still see that format everywhere. So that's to watch out for.
Excellent. Any further questions for Callum or Matthew from anybody?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thanks, Sam. You don't sound particularly well. I think you must have been ill for a fortnight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've been feeling a bit rubbish. All like COVID symptoms, but no, I'm not positive.
Right, okay. Yeah, there's a nasty cold about, isn't there?
Yeah, I've been really short of breath and really rubbish, but
God,
hey ho, get your violin out.
absolutely. Mike,
Hope you get better.
anything
you.
from you, Mike?
No, I think all good from me. Thank you very
All right.
much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks
Well,
for coming.
Thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon, and Callum and Matt, brilliant. Really enjoyed your presentation, and yeah, food for thought. I think lots to think about. But I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Scott.
Thanks everybody. Nice to meet all of you this afternoon, and get well soon, Sam.
Get well soon, Sam.
Get well soon.
Thank you very much.
I've dropped my email in the chat. If anyone wants just any security advice or anything like that, just let me know.
Excellent. Thanks very much, guys.
More than happy to help whenever.
Great.
Speak to you soon. Thanks a
No
lot.
problem.
Thanks a lot, guys. Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.